My mother-in-law left my 8-year-old son alone at home. "Mom, I'm alone. Come." My son called me and cried, so I came back immediately. Then the next day, when she came back, the call came to me in the middle of the night. I was groggy, disoriented by the time difference, and almost ignored it until I saw the name on the screen. "Liam, my 8-year-old son." I answered immediately. "Liam, what's wrong?" His voice was shaking. "Mom, I'm alone. Come." I sat up so fast I almost knocked my phone out of my hand. My mind struggled to catch up. "Alone? What do you mean alone? Where's Grandma? She left yesterday. She said she was going to the store, but she never came back. I waited, but she never came back. I don't know what to do." The fear in his voice made my stomach turn. I checked the time. If he meant yesterday, he had been alone for over a day. My 8-year-old had been abandoned, and I was on the other side of the country. "Liam, listen to me. Are you okay? Are the doors locked?" "Yes, but I'm scared. It's dark, and I don't know where she is. I don't know what to eat." His voice broke at the last word, and I could tell he was trying not to cry. My mind was racing. I had left on a business trip 3 days ago. Sarah, my wife, had been called away at the last minute for an emergency at work, so we had agreed to leave Liam with her mother, Susan. It wasn't our first choice. Susan wasn't the most reliable person, but it was only going to be for a few days. We figured she could handle looking after her grandson for a while. Now she was gone, and my son had been alone for over 24 hours. "Liam, I want you to listen to me, okay? You're doing great. Just stay inside, keep the doors locked, and don't answer if anyone knocks. I'm coming home right now. I'll be there as soon as I can, okay?" His voice was small. I forced myself to remain calm for his sake. "Do you have water? Do you remember how to make a sandwich?" "Yeah, but I don't want to be alone. I know, buddy." "I'm coming. Just hang on." As soon as I hung up, I sprang into action. I pulled out my laptop and booked the next available flight home. The earliest one left in 3 hours. I'd have to hurry, but I could make it. I grabbed my things, threw everything into my bag, and texted Sarah. She was still tied up at work, but she needed to know. Then I hesitated before dialing another number, my sister Rachel. She answered almost immediately. "David, what's up?" "I need a favor," I said, already on my way to the door. "Liam's in trouble." That was all it took. Rachel didn't ask any questions, just told me to keep her posted. If I needed backup, she'd be there. As I got into the cab to the airport, my heart was pounding. Susan had left my son. I didn't know why, and honestly, I didn't care. All I knew was that when I got back, she would have to answer for it. The flight felt endless. I sat there, clutching my phone and watching every minute go by. I kept thinking about Liam, sitting alone in that house, scared, hungry, waiting. How could Susan have just left him? Was she even planning on coming back? I tried calling her, but her phone went straight to voicemail. I tried again, same thing. My mind was spinning in 1,000 directions. Was she hurt? In the hospital? Dead in a ditch somewhere? Or, more likely, was she just the same selfish person I'd always known her to be? Susan had never liked me. She barely tolerated me for Sarah's sake, always making passive-aggressive comments about how I worked too much or how I took Sarah away from her. But to abandon her own grandson? That was a new low. Somewhere in the Midwest, my phone buzzed a text from Rachel. I called Susan's neighbors. No one has seen her since yesterday. Her car is gone. What the hell is going on? I stared at the screen. If her car was gone, that meant she had left on purpose. But where to? And why leave Liam like that? I replied, "I have no idea. I'll be home in a couple of hours. If you don't hear from me, check on Liam." As soon as we landed, I sprinted off the plane, not caring if I pushed past people. I grabbed the first cab I could find and gave the driver my address. When we pulled up to my house, I barely let the car stop before I jumped out. I ran up the porch steps and unlocked the door with shaking hands. "Liam," I called. I heard running footsteps, and then Liam ran into me, wrapping his arms around my waist. "You came," he murmured into my shirt. I held on to him, feeling the tension in his small body. He had probably been holding it together the whole time, trying to be brave. "I told you I would. Are you okay?" He nodded, but I could tell he wasn't. His eyes were red, as if he'd been crying. He looked exhausted. I led him into the kitchen and checked the refrigerator. It was almost empty. A few eggs, some expired milk, an old bottle of ketchup. That was it. "What did you eat?" "Crackers and peanut butter," he hesitated. "There was frozen pizza, but I didn't know how to make it." I felt a sharp pang of guilt. I never should have left him with Susan. I ordered food while I checked the house. Everything was in place, no sign of a struggle, just emptiness. Then I saw something on the counter, a folded piece of paper. I picked it up and read the single sentence written in Susan's handwriting. "This is not my responsibility." That was it. No explanation, no apology, just that. A slow, searing rage spread through me. Susan had done this on purpose. She had never wanted to watch Liam, and instead of saying no, she just walked away like he was a stray dog she was tired of. I took a deep breath and tried to control my anger. Liam didn't need to see me like this. The doorbell rang. I expected it to be the food delivery, but when I opened the door, I froze. It was Susan. She was standing there as if nothing had happened, holding a coffee cup as if she had just returned from a casual morning errand. Before I could say anything, she smiled and said, "Oh, good, you're back. We need to talk about Liam," as if nothing had happened. Like she hadn't just left him for a day. I didn't know what to expect from her, but I wasn't prepared for what came next. Susan was standing on my porch, sipping her coffee as if she had just dropped by for a friendly chat, as if she hadn't abandoned my son. Like she wasn't the reason I had to cancel everything and get on the first flight home. I stepped outside, closing the door behind me so Liam wouldn't hear. My pulse was still racing from everything rushing back, finding him alone, realizing how much worse Susan was than I had ever imagined. "You left Liam alone," I said, keeping my voice level. She tilted her head, as if I was being unreasonable. "No, I didn't." I let out a sharp breath. "Liam called me. He said you left yesterday morning and never came back. He'd been alone for more than a day. He was scared, and I found your note on the counter." I pulled it out of my pocket and read it aloud. "This is not my responsibility." She didn't even flinch. "And it's not," she said, completely unfazed. "You agreed to watch him." Susan sighed and shook her head. "I agreed because Sarah begged me to, but we both know I never wanted to do it. You just assumed I'd put my life on hold for you." I stared at her in disbelief. "So instead of saying no, you just left him? You left an 8-year-old? He's fine, isn't he?" She shot back. "I knew he'd figure it out, and guess what? He did. He called you. He survived. Maybe now you'll stop treating him like a helpless little baby." The anger in my chest burned hotter. "You had a job, Susan. Just take care of him. That's it. And you couldn't even do that for 3 days." She crossed her arms. "I don't owe you anything, David. I don't owe Liam anything either." I blinked. "Excuse me? You act like I'm some built-in babysitter, like my time doesn't matter. But I've spent my whole life doing things for other people, for my parents, for my siblings, for Sarah, and what do I get in return? A bunch of ungrateful people who want more. So no, I don't owe you anything." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "He's your grandson. So? That doesn't make me responsible for him." I had never hated her more than at that moment. She exhaled dramatically. "You know, I'd be a little more careful with the way you talk to me. You seem to forget how much influence I have over Sarah. Do you really want me to convince her that she might be better off without you?" I narrowed my eyes. "Are you seriously threatening my marriage right now?" She smiled. "I wouldn't call it a threat. I'm just saying Sarah and I talk a lot. She tells me things like how you're always working, how she feels like she's doing most of the parenting. And, well, If you keep acting like this, I might have to remind her of that a little more often. I took a slow breath, forcing myself not to explode. Sarah would never leave me just because you put ideas in her head. Susan smirked. Are you sure? I clenched my jaw. I don't care what kind of manipulation you try. You're done being in Liam's life. She gave me a bored look. That's sweet, but you might want to think this through, because if I'm out of Liam's life, that also means I won't be paying back the $10. Oh, I borrowed from you last year. A new wave of anger swept through me. That was a loan. You promised to pay me back. She shrugged. Well, maybe I was going to, but now I'm not so sure. I mean, what incentive do I have if you're going to treat me like a villain no matter what? Why should I bother? I could hardly believe what I was hearing. She had abandoned my son, threatened my marriage, and now she was holding 10 grand over my head, like it was some kind of game. I stepped closer and lowered my voice. Let me be very clear. I don't need your money. I don't need you. But after what you pulled, don't expect to ever be a part of our lives again. You are done. Susan just smiled. We'll see what Sarah has to say about that. And with that, she turned and walked away, humming to herself as if she hadn't just declared war on my family. Susan walked away as if she had already won, as if she hadn't just made the most manipulative threats I'd ever heard. I stood there, fists clenched, watching her disappear down the driveway. My blood was boiling, but I wasn't going to let her get inside my head. I went back inside and locked the door behind me. Liam was sitting at the kitchen table, pushing around a piece of toast I had made for him. His eyes flickered up. Was that Grandma? I forced myself to relax. He didn't need to see my anger. Yeah, but don't worry about her. He hesitated. Is she mad at me? I squatted next to him. Why would she be mad at you? He shrugged. Because I called you. She didn't want me to. My stomach twisted. She told you not to call me? He nodded. She said I should wait, but I got scared. I put a hand on his shoulder. You did the right thing, buddy. I always want you to call me, no matter what anyone says. Understand? He nodded again, but I could tell he was still uncertain. I wanted to ask more, but my phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out. It was Sarah. I answered immediately. Hey, David, what the hell is going on? Her voice was sharp. I exhaled. I guess you talked to your mom. She just called me crying and said you attacked her for no reason, and told her she's never allowed to see Liam again. I closed my eyes and pinched the bridge of my nose. Of course. Of course, Susan was already spinning her own version of the story. That's not what happened, Sarah sighed. Then tell me what did happen, because she's saying some pretty crazy things. I looked at Liam, who was still watching me closely. I didn't want him to hear this. Hold on. I went into the other room and lowered my voice. Your mother left Liam alone for more than a day, Sarah. He called me yesterday, crying, because she just disappeared and never came back. Silence. What? She abandoned him. No call, no text, nothing. And when I got home, I found a note from her saying, "This is not my responsibility." That's all she left. No food, no explanation, just that. Sarah's breathing was ragged now. She left him? Yes. No, she wouldn't. She stopped herself. You're sure? Liam told me himself. And I saw the note with my own eyes. She didn't even try to deny it when I confronted her. She just made excuses. Sarah was silent for a long moment, then, more quietly, she said you threatened her. I let out a bitter laugh. Threatened her? She was the one who did the threatening. She said that if I didn't calm down, she would convince you to leave me. And then she said she wouldn't pay back the $10,000 she owes us. Sarah inhaled sharply. She said that? Yes. Word for word, more silence. Then, finally, I need to talk to her, David. No, David, the first need to hear it from her. She'll lie to you. Sarah hesitated, and I could hear the conflict in her voice. I can't believe she would do that. But I can't believe you'd make it up either. I need to hear it for myself. I clenched my jaw. Fine. But don't let her twist things around. She abandoned our son, and I don't care what excuses she makes. I'm done with her. Sarah didn't immediately respond. Then she finally said, I'll call you after I talk to her. The line went dead. I dropped the phone on the table and ran a hand through my hair. This was just what Susan wanted. She was playing her games, trying to get Sarah on her side. I had a bad feeling this wasn't over, not even close. I paced the kitchen, waiting for Sarah to call back. Every second felt like an hour. Liam was curled up on the couch with his tablet, but I could tell he wasn't really paying attention. He kept glancing at me, sensing the tension in the air. When my phone finally rang, I immediately grabbed it. Well? Sarah's voice was tense. She admitted it. I stopped pacing. She what? Not in those exact words, but yes. I confronted her, and she tried to dance around it at first, saying she didn't think it was a big deal. But when I pressed her, she finally said, Well, I knew David would come running back the second. Liam called him, so what does it matter? I gripped the phone tighter. She planned this? Sarah let out a shaky breath. I think so. I couldn't believe it. This wasn't just negligence. This wasn't a mistake. This was deliberate. Sarah went on, her voice thick with emotion. She said she did it to prove a point that we were expecting too much of her, that she wanted to show us what it's like when people don't bend over backwards for us. I rubbed my temples. She used our child to make a point? Yes. I sat down and let that sink in. I had always known Susan was selfish, but this was different. This was malicious. Sarah sniffed. She kept trying to turn it around on me, saying that I was letting you control me and that family should come first, that I should see things from her point of view. I scoffed. Her perspective? What perspective justifies leaving a child alone for more than a day? I know, Sarah said. That's when I told her we were done. I froze. You did? Yes. Her voice cracked a little. I told her she wasn't welcome in our lives anymore, that she'd never see Liam again. And you know what she said? I braced myself. What? Sarah let out a bitter laugh. Fine, but don't come crawling back when you need money. I blinked. The money? The 10 grand she owes us? Yep. She acted like it was hers to give, like we were the ones depending on her. I shook my head in disbelief. Unreal, Sarah sighed. David, I should have listened to you before. I kept thinking she was just difficult, but she's actually dangerous. She doesn't care about anyone but herself. I exhaled, finally feeling the tension leave my chest. I know. This hasn't been easy for you. It wasn't, she admitted. But Liam comes first. Always. I felt a rush of relief. Sarah was with me on this. We were finally done with Susan. Then, just as I was about to reply, my phone buzzed again, a new text message from a number I didn't recognize. I opened it, and my blood ran cold. It was a screenshot of a bank transaction, a deposit of $10,000. And at the bottom, a message, "You got your money. Now stay out of my life." I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. Susan had actually paid us back, not because she felt guilty, not because she cared. She just wanted to make sure we never had a reason to contact her again. And honestly, that was fine with me. I stared at the text and read it 3 times. Susan had indeed paid us back, no fight, no excuses, just a lump sum transfer with the final message telling us to stay out of her life. I hung up the phone and exhaled slowly. Sarah, check your account. There was a pause, then some tapping on her end of the line. A second later, she let out a soft laugh, one that was more disbelief than humor. She actually did it. Yeah, Sarah sighed. I guess she wanted to make sure we couldn't pin anything on her. Good, I said. Now she has nothing on us either. We sat in silence for a few moments, both processing the same thing. This was it, the end of it. Susan was cutting herself out of our lives, and frankly, it was a relief. Sarah spoke first. I don't know what I was expecting, but I didn't think it would end like this. Neither did I admitted. I thought she'd keep pushing, keep trying to manipulate you. I think she realized she was losing. Sarah said. She knew she couldn't talk her way out of it, and she hates looking weak. So instead of apologizing or even fighting for a relationship, she just wiped her hands of it. Classic Susan, I muttered. Sarah hesitated. I know it's the right thing to do, but it still hurts. She's my mom, David. I softened. I know, she sniffed. I keep thinking maybe she loved me in her own way. But I don't think she ever saw me as a person, just someone she could control. And when she realized she couldn't do that anymore, she just threw me away. I rubbed my jaw. She tried to do the same with Liam, but we won't let that happen. Sarah exhaled. No, we're not. A small voice interrupted us. Dad? I turned to see Liam standing in the hall, rubbing his eyes. Yeah, buddy. Is Grandma mad at us? I squatted down so we were at eye level. No, she's not mad. But she won't be coming around anymore. Liam studied my face. Because she left me? Yeah, I hesitated. Because she made a choice that wasn't right. And when people make bad choices, sometimes we have to protect ourselves from them. Liam thought about it for a second, then he nodded. Okay. I ruffled his hair. You hungry? Yeah, I smiled. Go pick something out, anything you want. He grinned and ran into the kitchen. Sarah's voice came over the phone again. He's handling this better than I am. He's strong, I said. Like his mom. She let out a little laugh. Thank you, David, for handling all this, for putting Liam first. Always. We talked for a while, and when we hung up, I felt lighter. It was over the fighting, the manipulation, the weight of Susan hanging over our family. It was gone. Liam came back with a ridiculous assortment of snacks, chips, cookies, and a banana to compensate. He plopped down on the couch next to me. Can we watch a movie? I smiled. Of course. As the opening credits rolled, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time, peace.